My name is not important. What matters is what I do and who I do it for. I drive a city bus. Route 47, from the east side of Columbus, Ohio, all the way out past Morse Road, looping back through Clintonville before dark. I have driven that same route for 19 years. I know every pothole, every stop sign that leans a little to the left, every regular who gets on at the corner of Carl and Hudson with a coffee cup that's always too full. I know this city the way you know a person, the good parts and the ugly parts, and the parts that used to be something else entirely. My son, Elijah, is 34 years old. He works in commercial real estate downtown. He wears suits that cost more than my first car. He married a woman named Diane 3 years ago, and her family has money the way some families have furniture, just always been there. Nobody remembers where it came from. I don't say that to be bitter. I say it because you need to understand the distance between where Elijah started and where he stands now. I'm proud of him. I have always been proud of him. I drove that bus through 2 recessions and 1 pandemic, so that boy could go to Ohio State without a loan hanging over his head. I packed his lunch until he was 17 because I wanted him to eat real food, not whatever the cafeteria was selling. When his mother passed, Elijah was 22, just finished his junior year. I kept driving. Grief or no grief, bills don't pause for a funeral. So when my son called me last November and told me his in-laws were hosting a big Christmas dinner, formal, they said, the whole extended family, and asked if I'd like to come, I said yes without hesitation. I went out and bought a sport coat, navy blue from the Macy's at Eastland, $43 on clearance. I was ready. That phone call came on a Tuesday. The second call came on a Thursday. It was Elijah again. His voice had that particular sound, the one I first heard when he was 8, and had broken something and was trying to figure out how to tell me. Tight, careful. He said, "Dad, there's been a change with Christmas." I said, "What kind of change?" Long pause. "Diane's mother, she's reorganizing things. Smaller guest list." I asked if I was still on it. Another pause. Longer this time. "She's trying to keep it to immediate family on her side this year." I let that sit for a second. "Elijah, I am immediate family." "I know, Dad, I know that." "Then what are we talking about?" He didn't answer right away. And in that silence I heard everything he wasn't saying. I've been driving people around this city for 19 years. I know what a person sounds like when they're embarrassed and trying to spare you something. "Tell me straight," I said. He let out a breath. "Diane's mother made a comment. About the bus. She said she wasn't sure it was the right environment for the kind of dinner they were planning. That the guests were, I don't know, Dad. She used the word refined. She said she wanted the evening to feel a certain way." I didn't say anything. Elijah rushed to fill the silence. "It's not about you. She doesn't even know you. It's just, they have a whole thing. The house is big. They hire someone to cater. Everyone dresses up. And she made some comments about what kind of conversation you'd be able to contribute." "What kind of conversation I'd be able to contribute?" I repeated. "Dad, she thinks a bus driver can't hold a dinner conversation." He didn't deny it. I took a breath. I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to fix this. I just wanted to tell you myself before." I said, "Okay, son, don't worry about it." We hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a while. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a neighbor's kid was bouncing a basketball in the driveway, that steady knock, knock, knock that goes on until it gets dark. I wasn't angry. That surprised me a little. I thought I'd be angry. What I felt was more like that tiredness you get when something confirms what you already suspected. Not shocking, just heavy. I'd met Diane's mother, Sandra, twice. Once at the engagement party, once at the wedding. She was the kind of woman who smiled warmly while her eyes were doing something else entirely. At the wedding, she asked me what I did. And when I told her, she said, "Oh, isn't that something?" in a tone that made very clear she did not think it was something. She moved on to the next conversation before I'd finished my sentence. I didn't lose sleep over it then. I'm 63 years old. I know who I am. But something changed for me that Thursday night, sitting in my kitchen. Not anger. Something quieter. A decision. I called my son back. "Elijah," I said, "I want you to come to my house for Christmas instead." Silence. "Just us," I said, "the way we used to do it. I'll make the whole dinner. Turkey, cornbread dressing, sweet potato pie, green beans the way your mother made them, low and slow with smoked turkey neck. I'll have it ready by 2 o'clock. Dad, He stopped. "What about Diane?" "Diane is your wife. She is welcome at my table any day of her life. If she wants to come, she comes. If she wants to stay with her family, I understand. But I'm asking you to come home for Christmas." Another long pause. Then, "Okay, Dad, we'll be there. Now, I should tell you something about my house. It's a 1962 brick ranch on Sunbury Road, on the east side. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. A basement I've been finishing for about 11 years. The yard has nothing special. The neighbors are good people. My driveway has a crack in it from a tree root that I keep meaning to fix. It is not a showpiece, but it's mine, paid off, and it smells like the coffee I've been making in the same percolator since 1987, and the walls have pictures of Elijah from kindergarten all the way through graduation, and in the corner of the living room there is still the armchair where his mother used to sit and read, and I have never moved it, and I never will. That is my house. The week before Christmas, I started cooking. I don't do anything halfway when it comes to this. My mother taught me to cook before she taught me to drive, and I have never forgotten a thing she showed me. Thursday, I brined the turkey. Friday, I made the pie filling and left it to set. Saturday, I prepped the greens and let them marinate overnight with the turkey neck and a little apple cider vinegar, the way that draws the bitterness out and leaves something you can't get from any recipe card. My next-door neighbor, Ruth Ann, she's 71, lost her husband 4 years back, makes the best pound cake in Franklin County. She knocked on my door Saturday afternoon and asked what I was doing. "Cooking Christmas," I said. She looked at the spread on my kitchen counter. "For how many people?" 2, maybe more. She laughed that big laugh of hers. "You need help?" I said I wouldn't turn it down. She came back Sunday with her pound cake and a pan of macaroni and cheese that she's famous for at our church. We cooked together most of Sunday afternoon. Her son stopped by. My buddy Lawrence. We drove together for 12 years before he retired. He came by with his wife, Patrice. They brought a Jell-O salad that nobody was going to eat, but Patrice makes it every year, and it would not be Christmas without it. By Sunday evening, I had more food than I could possibly serve 2 people. I didn't plan it that way. It just happened, the way things do when your house is the kind of place people like to be. Christmas morning, I got up at 5, showered, put on my good trousers and the green flannel shirt Elijah gave me 2 years ago, started warming things up at 6, set the dining room table, the real table, the one that only comes out for holidays, that my mother-in-law gave us when Elijah's mother and I got married. It seats 8. I put out a cloth tablecloth, the good plates, the silverware that lives in a felt-lined box in the sideboard. At 9:30, Elijah pulled up. He came in first, and a look on his face when he smelled that kitchen. I will keep that look for the rest of my life. He is 34 years old, and for just a second he was 10 again, standing in the same doorway on Christmas morning. He hugged me for a long time. Then Diane came in behind him. I want to be careful here because I don't think Diane is a bad person. I think she grew up in a house where certain things were assumed, and she never had cause to question them. She looked around my dining room, at Ruth Ann's pound cake on the sideboard, at the Jell-O salad, at the plates her mother would have probably described as outdated, and something shifted in her face. I'm not sure what it was. Recognition, maybe. She said, "This smells incredible." I said, "Thank you, Merry Christmas." She said, "Merry Christmas," and she meant it, I could tell. Lawrence and Patrice came by at noon. Ruth Ann came back with her son. Our pastor, Reverend Coleman, and his wife stopped in. I had not even called them. Ruth Ann must have said something at church. A woman from down the street, Miss Odette, who has trouble with her hip but never misses a meal worth attending. By 1 o'clock, there were 11 people in my house, and every chair was full, and I had to bring up 2 folding chairs from the basement. We ate for 2 hours. We talked about everything and nothing. Lawrence told the story about the blizzard of 2004, when we had to keep the buses running and he got stuck on I-270 for 4 hours. Reverend Coleman told a long and winding story about his first Christmas in Columbus 40 years ago. That had everyone leaning in. Miss Odette fell asleep in the armchair after her second piece of pie, and nobody bothered her because we all understood. Elijah sat next to me. We didn't say much to each other directly, the way you don't need to talk when you're sitting next to someone you know completely. But once, toward the end of the meal, when it was loud and warm and the windows were steaming up from all the food and all the people, he leaned over and said quietly, "Dad, I'm sorry." I looked at him. "For not fighting harder," he said. "I should have fought harder." I put my hand on his arm. "You called me," I said. "You told me straight, and you came home. That's everything." He nodded. He looked at the table, at all these people who'd just showed up because that's what people do when a place feels like somewhere they want to be. "She told her mother," he said, "about today." "Oh?" Her mother asked what the dinner was like. Diane said it was the best Christmas she'd had in years. He paused. Her mother didn't know what to say to that. I smiled. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need anything else. I didn't need to. Now I'll tell you something I've never told my son. When I hung up that Thursday, after he told me about Sandra's comments, after I said, "Okay," and ended the call, I did not sit quietly at the kitchen table feeling philosophical. I sat there feeling something small and cold in my chest, something I recognized from a long time ago, from years when I was younger and the world made very clear what it thought of a black man with a union card and a city bus and no college degree. I know that feeling. I've carried it before. I know how to set it down. What I have learned in 63 years is this: dignity is not something anyone can give you. It is also not something anyone can take. They can disrespect you. They can exclude you. They can look past you at a dinner table and act like you have nothing to contribute. None of that changes what you are. I drove that bus for 19 years. I raised a son alone after his mother died. I own my house free and clear. I can cook a Thanksgiving turkey that makes grown adults cry. I have friends who show up without being asked, and neighbors who bring pound cake, and a pastor who tells stories that last 45 minutes and nobody minds. Sandra does not know any of that. She knows a job title, and she decided that was enough. That is her loss, not mine. Elijah called me on the 27th, 2 days after Christmas. He said Diane had told her mother that she wanted her parents to meet me properly, not at a big family event but a real dinner, just the 5 of us. He said Sandra had agreed. He said, "How do you feel about that, Dad?" I said, "Tell her I'll bring the sweet potato pie." He laughed. It was a good laugh, loose and real, the kind he used to have before suits and boardrooms and trying to exist in 2 worlds at once. "Dad," he said, "she doesn't know what she's agreeing to." "No," I said, "she doesn't. I'm not going to pretend that dinner with Sandra will be easy. It probably won't be. She will sit across from me and see a bus driver, and I will sit across from her and see a woman who tried to erase me from my own son's Christmas. We will both have to decide what to do with what we see. But I have been driving Route 47 for 19 years. I have navigated worse roads than that. There is something I tell my passengers sometimes when they're frustrated, stuck in traffic, late for something, watching the time on their phone. I say, the road is the road. You don't get to change it by wishing it were different. You can only drive it. I have driven mine the best I know how, and every Christmas, as long as I'm standing, my table will be full, my food will be real, and anyone who shows up will be welcome. That's the kind of man I am. My son knows it. And one day, I suspect, Sandra will too. I've been thinking about what happened this past Christmas a lot. Not obsessively, more the way you return to something that taught you something real, the way you'd return to a road you drove once in bad weather and made it through fine. What Sandra did wasn't unusual. That's the honest truth. People sort other people by what they do for a living, by the neighborhood, by the car in the driveway, and they make their decisions based on that sorting. It's an old habit. I don't think Sandra woke up that morning trying to be cruel. I think she just never had a reason to question the way she measured people. But here's what I've come to understand. Every action has a weight to it. Not in some mystical sense, just practically. The way cause and effect work in the real world. Sandra decided a bus driver had nothing to contribute to her Christmas table. That decision had a consequence. Her son-in-law spent Christmas at his father's house on Sunbury Road, surrounded by neighbors and friends, and a pastor who tells stories that go on too long, and a woman who makes the best pound cake in Franklin County. Sandra sat with her catered dinner and found out from her own daughter that the best Christmas in years happened without her. She didn't lose because I arranged it that way. She lost because her own reasoning was wrong. That's how it works. When you make decisions based on who a person appears to be rather than who they actually are, you cut yourself off from things you can't replace. That's not punishment. That's just the natural result of a flawed way of seeing. I think about Elijah, too. My son is a good man who got caught between two worlds, and for a moment made the easier choice. He let it happen. He didn't fight it, and I don't hold that against him. I held it loosely, the way you hold something you know a person will need to work through on their own. What matters is that when I called him back and said, "Come home," he came. That took something. It takes a particular kind of courage to choose your routes when the world you've built for yourself is pulling in the other direction. Intelligence isn't only what you learn in school. Some of the smartest thing a person can do is recognize where their real foundation is. Elijah knew. He just needed a moment to remember. And me. I made a choice too. I could have spent that Thursday night in resentment. I could have let Sandra's opinion shrink me. I didn't. Not because I'm especially strong, but because I've lived long enough to know that other people's limited vision is not a mirror. It doesn't show you who you are. It shows you who they are. I drove a city bus for 19 years. I raised a son on what that work paid. I cooked a Christmas dinner that 11 people showed up for without being asked. I own my house, I know my neighbors, I have lived with enough integrity that when I needed people around me, they came. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything. The lesson I keep coming back to is simple and not simple at all. The life you build quietly, day by day, with honesty and work and genuine care for the people around you. That life has a gravity to it. People are drawn to it. They show up. They bring pound cake. They stay until dark. No title gives you that. No catered dinner buys it. You either build it or you don't. And you build it the only way it can be built. One ordinary day at a time. doing right by the people who are counting on you, even when nobody is watching. I think Diane understood something that Christmas. I think she went home and looked at her mother and saw, maybe for the first time, what gets lost when you spend your life measuring people wrong. I'm not angry at Sandra. I'm going to bring her my sweet potato pie and sit at her table and look her in the eye, and maybe she'll surprise me. People can grow. That door stays open. But I'll tell you this, my table will always be fuller than hers. Not because I have more money, because I chose, every single day, to be someone worth showing up for. That's the only thing I know for certain, and it's enough.